Let's go.
Let's go. Oh, no.
Do you want to?
Sorry. I'll let you.
Next one.
I'm excited and I feel relaxed and I'm ready to party. Don't say sorry. You don't need to do that. You don't need to apologize. It's a fucked up female habit. You don't need to be sorry for anything ever.
Can you guess what every woman's worst nightmare is?
I don't have rage issues!
I have nothing to prove to you.
When I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better.
I say when it comes to stardom and Lauren, there are no accidents.
Hi, Karen Peterson.
Alrighty. So we are going to go in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Citizen Dame, the podcast where we're on time. And we know about like gay Westerns, and those are two things that we're really good at. So I'm Lauren Humphries Brooks. With me, as always, is Karen Peterson. Hello, Karen.
Hi, I don't know what you're talking about. Westerns are super straight all the time. All of them.
As we proved last week with Veracruz, and as we are going to prove this week, really the straightest of genres.
So straight.
Yeah, incredibly so. So how are you doing, Karen? We are recording a little late this week, so this episode's coming out a little bit later than usual.
Yeah, we're a little off this week.
Yeah, just
definitely not for any reason of, anybody's fault. It just happened.
No, yeah. Well, it was
I was ready to record, just the wrong thing.
Just not the correct one. And also, we usually record bonuses in the middle of the week, and we were trying to record in the middle of the week because I was going away on the weekend, and so it made sense. The error was not just out of left field, definitely. So it was just an error.
Yeah, normally we record our regular episodes on Saturday morning. We were not doing that this week, and so everything was just off in my brain.
Yeah, everything's got a little bit thrown off, but we are here. It is Tuesday night, so once again you are getting Citizen Dame not quite after dark. It is actually still sunny here in New York, but getting close to after dark.
Yes.
And so how are you doing, Karen, before we get going on this super straight genre?
I'm doing all right. I was gonna say it's been a busy week, but it's still only Tuesday. But since we last recorded, it's been busy and mostly good things. It was Juneteenth, so I had a long weekend and got to enjoy that. And now I'm just settling into another week of fun and excitement of work.
Well, and actually, since we last recorded, I went to Brooklyn Pride.
Oh, yeah.
Which was fantastic. It was loads of fun. And the Knicks won! Woo! The same day as Brooklyn Pride and the Puerto Rican Day Parade. The Knicks won. We are champions.
Sounds like a perfect day in New York City.
New York was buzzing, man. It was fantastic. And like I said, I am not even a basketball fan, and I was excited. I was like, yay! It's like the city was just so happy. It was just, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
So
yes. So cool.
Yes, wonderful time here in the greatest city on earth.
I'll give you that, but California is the best state.
I mean, I'd be willing to accept that. I have to say, coming from upstate New York, I feel like I need to defend it, but also, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't feel the need to defend Los Angeles because I don't actually live in Los Angeles. I love Los Angeles. It's pretty great, but I would agree that New York is a better city.
I have to say, I really liked Los Angeles. I liked visiting there. I liked sort of the air, different areas of Los Angeles. I could not get a feel at all for Los Angeles as a city, and I think that was, it feels like it's one of those cities that it's a city, but it isn't a city at the same time.
It's it's like a mini United States. It's a collection of of places that don't really go together, but we have a common bond.
Yeah. Whereas New York is because it's confined to these islands, it's a very specific place, and it has a very strong, like, and each borough has its own identity, but there's this very strong identity of New York.
Yeah.
New York City, like what that is and what it looks like and what it feels like. And a lot of the cities that I've lived in for an extended period of time have had that, where you've got it's a very structured, it's very like, this is the city, right? Whereas LA just definitely didn't have that vibe while I was there, at least. But obviously I've never lived there.
Yeah, I've lived in California pretty much my entire life, and I still don't understand the geography of Los Angeles. Not entirely. Like, I have a pretty good handle on it, but I don't know. Like, there's a fire in Boyle Heights. It's been going for a week, and we're dealing with the smoke. And I know Boyle Heights is like 40 miles from my house, but I'm not actually sure where Boyle Heights is.
I have to say that the two of the things that really surprised me, I guess, about LA was I knew this, but I didn't know it, is the number of hills and mountains that are like right there.
Yeah.
And then also the beach, which is also right there. Like this, like, oh, that's the ocean. Okay. Like there's just something I don't know, it just didn't 100% connect, even though I knew it like logically, academically. But so it's just like, that's a big ass mountain right there.
Yeah, when they say that you can surf and ski in the same day in California, like that is literal. That is really actually true.
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting place. But New York is definitely the superior city in so many ways.
New York is great. I love New York.
So we're going to talk about America.
America.
This is like the most American of genres. The Western, which of course we talked about Veracruz last week. And this week we are going to talk about the exceptional homoerotic subtext in Johnny Guitar, which is a Western from 1954. So the same year actually as Veracruz. And it's directed by Nicholas Ray and stars Joan Crawford, Sterling Hayden, Mercedes McCambridge, Scott Brady, and Ward Bond, and also includes like the staples of the Western genre, including Ernest Borgnine, who's also in Veracruz, and just keeps on appearing, keeps on getting beaten up and getting his ass kicked in all of these various roles.
Yeah, he has a rough time of it in 1954.
He really does. Like, and also John Carradine, Royal Dano, like, if you recognize so many of these actors, they're kind of contract players, they're character actors that show up in a lot of Westerns and like a lot of gangster films and things like that. But they're like these very recognizable characters. So
I just have to throw this in right here because it's funny. But yeah, so I just said 1954 was a rough year for Ernest Borgnine. Well, they made up for it the next year because he starred in Marty, which won Best Picture. Just had to mention that.
And it's Ernest Borgnine is hilarious because he is so gentle and lovely in Marty, and he also
won Best Actor.
And he always plays such like mean assholes in his Westerns. Like he's always the big dumb jerk. In Westerns, like, and he's usually, he's a secondary, third character. He's not particularly important, but he's part of the gang, basically. Okay, so the plot of Johnny Guitar is a woman played by Joan Crawford owns a saloon in a very tiny, remote Arizona cattle town where the railroad is about to come through. And she is kind of banking on this in order to make her fortune, to get a lot of people arriving in this little tiny town. And she's sort of being, her opposition are the cattle ranchers and the miners who are headed by Ward Bond and by Mercedes McCambridge. So headed by, John McKeevers and Emma Small, who are in opposition to the railroad arriving, bringing in all of these new people, taking over more of the land, and kind of disrupting everything. And it's sort of in the midst of all of this is the Dancin Kid and his gang, who are miners, actually. They are silver miners. They own a small silver mine. Yeah. They own a small silver mine, and they've just basically been traveling around and trying to make their fortunes. But they are very heavily suspected by the townspeople, believed to be actually outlaws and criminals, and that Vienna is sort of protecting them. And then into the midst of this comes Sterling Hayden as Johnny Guitar, who's also once known as Johnny Logan. He is a former gunfighter, and he has kind of been, and also Vienna's former lover, and has been summoned by Vienna to come in and basically provide security for her saloon. And that's sort of the situation. It all blows up really, really quickly. With all of these accusations against the Dancin Kid, the death of Emma's brother in a stagecoach holdup, which the Dancin Kid and his gang are sort of accused of doing, even though there's absolutely no proof against them. And so you get this sort of culture of paranoia and of violence and of accusations that are swirling around. And at the center of all of this is this very intense hatred between Emma and Vienna, and kind of where all of that is coming from, which is what we're going to talk about when it comes to homoerotic subtext. But I think this is a really interesting film. I just want to start out by saying that I first saw this film in grad school. This was part of my film history course, basically. That or it was called film. I think it was called film form, which is like, so it's various styles of film, things like that. And this was sort of the genre that was being used to demonstrate what genre is, and it was the Western. And this is one of the films that got shown. And I have to say, my entire film class just absolutely adored this movie. It is so campy. It is so like extreme in all of its symbolism, in kind of the heavy-handedness of some of it, the heavy-handedness of the acting, even the use of these Western archetypes, which we talked a little bit about when we were talking about Veracruz, and then kind of upending some of the gender roles and just some of the things that we expect from a Western. Again, going back to some of those things that we were discussing last week when we were talking about the history of the Western and the transition that is going on with the Western in the 1950s, and particularly with films like Veracruz, like Johnny Guitar, and this kind of turnover that's happening in Hollywood. It is also a very fairly explicit critique of McCarthy era Hollywood, and particularly HUAC and the naming of names. And this was really incredibly deliberate. Sterling Hayden had in fact been brought before HUAC. He was a fellow traveler, and he had in fact named names. And the entire text of the film is about mob justice, is about unfounded accusations, and particularly the fear of outsiders and personal vendettas and hatred that then kind of get exploded into actual mob violence and vigilante justice. So it's a really interesting film, I think, for a lot of reasons, including the homoerotic subtext. So, Karen, this was your first time seeing Johnny Guitar. This is one of my favorite Westerns. What are your thoughts just at the outset of like watching this film for the first time?
So, what I do anytime you suggest a movie that I know that you really enjoy is when I sit down to watch it, I try to look for why you would be interested in it, why you would like it. And that, I don't know, for some reason, especially with certain movies, that just helps me get more into a mindset of like, okay, Lauren likes this, and I'm gonna like, I don't know, just watching it from that angle just kind of helps me have sort of a way into a movie. Maybe that sounds weird, but I do that.
No, I get it.
Actually a lot. And so with this one, I definitely went into it with that mindset, like, okay, this is a movie that Lauren really loves. So I'm gonna watch it with that in mind and look for why she loves it. This movie that I've never seen before. And I feel like I get it, even though I didn't love it myself right away. I definitely want to watch it again, and I will watch it again. because what threw me off, what was hard for me, and it's not that I didn't expect it, but it was just like what stopped me from totally just falling in love with this movie was the level of camp because it's
Yeah.
very campy. I think that some of the performances are just so silly that it was just like, okay. But as I was watching, I was really paying attention, especially to the I was gonna say relationship, but that's not the right word. The animosity and the
Hmm.
just like supposed hatred between these two women, and watching the way that they as characters are written, the way that they're presented, the way that they interact with each other, with other people. And I was like, okay, I feel like I get why Lauren likes this movie, and I think that it does accomplish some things very well. And for those reasons, I'm like, yeah, this actually I do think it's good. I want to watch it again.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, if you don't go into it with the mindset of like looking for what to like, if you're just watching it, just sitting down on a Saturday, it might not work for you so much.
It's so it yeah, that like I agree with you. I think it's one of those films that one of the reasons why I loved it initially was because I went into being like, okay, this is being shown in a film class, right? So this is a, it is considered to be a very important Western for a couple of different reasons. But this is being shown in a film class, like we're sort of expecting the searchers, we're expecting something that is very like, here we have a quintessential Western.
Yeah.
And what we get is Joan Crawford, like, and Sterling Hayden showing up with a guitar on his back, sipping a little teacup, right? We get Joan Crawford in like a bright red lipstick. And at one
It's like
point,
fire engine red.
yeah,
It is the brightest red lipstick.
at one point, sitting on this sort of raised stage in a totally white poofy dress, playing piano while the posse shows up to get her, right?
Mhm.
So it is like this, it's incredibly stylized. It is like shockingly so in some ways. And I do think that that is, intentional.
Yeah.
I do think it is definitely, it's not necessarily being played for laughs, but it's being played in a deliberately melodramatic and deliberately over the top way, across the board. And that's one of the things that I do really like about it. And I think that what it accomplishes, so when, and we're going to talk about the queer subtext, but at the political level, I think it's really interesting because it is coming at this time in Hollywood. It is making these very, to me, was very obvious commentary on the Hollywood situation and what happened in the McCarthy era. I mean, even the guy who's the head of the posse is named McKeevers. And he's being played by Ward Bond, who is a staunch anti-communist and a member of the American Fascist Party prior to World War II. And you've got him playing the head of the posse who believes he's the good guy. Who are going after these completely innocent men who then turn to crime because they are being accused, right? So it's very politically, it is really, really on the nose, and I really enjoy that about it. And it's sort of being covered over in this Western, this incredibly American Western narrative and imagery, and you do have that bright, and you also have that upending of so many of the gender roles,
Yeah.
particularly when it comes to Vienna and to Emma, and also to Johnny, and the way that the two women compete with one another and the things that they want out of life, and how that is focused on, and how it ultimately culminates in a shootout between two women, which is incredibly unusual.
One of the things that struck me as I was doing some reading about the movie
Yeah.
was the fact that when this came out, it was not well received in the
No,
United
yeah.
States. It was very much like people people thought it was silly, they thought it was ridiculous, which I can understand that, especially like you say, if you go in expecting the searchers and you get this,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, what are we doing here? But but yeah, it's interesting because, so I can see how people in the United States would have that reaction because not that Americans are not intelligent, but when it comes to deeper themes in
Yeah.
movies, we as a country, we as a culture tend to not like to think too deeply about movies that fall into certain categories, a Western being one of them. You know, people want a Western that's just like good guys versus bad guys, and it's really straightforward. You know who to root for, you know who to root against, and that's it. And I do
Yeah.
think to a large extent, Johnny Guitar has that because it is very clear. You have the people that are being falsely accused of stuff, and you have the people that are doing the accusing, and clearly there's good guys and bad guys there. But there are deeper themes in this movie, not
Mhm.
just, although very important, but not just the subtext of queerness. There's the rise of or the threat of the rise of fascism. There's the communist scare. There's all those things
Yeah.
that for people watching this movie in Europe that are a more savvy movie-going population and also have been on the receiving end of the rise of fascism in Europe just not that long before this movie came out, they would they would look at this a very different way than we would. And so you can see why, or I could see why this would have been more embraced in Europe. Um, and also, you know, like they're not expecting a super serious Western movie anyway. Like that's not they want. I don't know if I'm making any
Yeah.
sense, but
No,
um,
I agree. There's a certain there's a certain almost European sensibility, I think, about the film
yeah,
that it's a little tongue in cheek. It is kind of making fun of the Western to a certain degree.
hmm
That's where some of the camp is coming from, in that stylization, in that kind of reversal of roles. In this sort of, the hero of the film being this female saloon keeper played by Joan Crawford, right?
right.
All of that is very, and not being Sterling Hayden with a gun. Like
hmm
that's part of it. So it is this upending of expectations, I think, that throws you off a little bit, and that does become more common in Westerns of this era. So that's, what we were talking about last week, that transitional period. And it's a transitional period not just for the Western, but for Hollywood itself, right? So you've got this incredibly quintessential genre that is represented by the Western, and stars as well. So people like Joan Crawford, who's a big star and has been a big star since the 1920s, right?
Yeah,
She's
she
been,
wanted this to kind of revive her career.
yeah, and so she sort of comes into this, and you've got all of these kind of over the top performances almost. So there's long sections of this film that are people talking to each other, which is unusual in a Western, right? So the way that the tension is built is the conflict that the interpersonal conflict that is happening. And it also has this theatrical aspect to it, that it feels like it's being performed on a stage, right? You've got Vienna's, you never really see the town, right? If there really is one. But you've got like Vienna's, which is just kind of in the middle of nowhere, and something is going to grow up around it because of the railroad coming through, but it's just sort of standing there. You've got, the hidden mine and the lair of the Dancin Kid and his group. You've got Johnny just appearing out of nowhere, and it's not really clear, like when we initially meet him, like what is he doing there? Why is he there? He introduces himself, of all things, as Johnny Guitar. I'm like, it's such a silly name.
It's
Like this,
not
like
his
that's
real name.
yeah, it's just like that's a silly name. And he's got a guitar in his back. He refuses to carry a gun. You got this guy who calls himself the Dancin Kid. He doesn't actually have a name.
There's a
It
guy named Turkey.
Yeah, it's all of these like, that's where the camp comes from. And I do think that, it makes sense, like you say, that the Europeans would understand this and would see the sort of beauty and the humor and the poetry within it as well. I think it's indicative also that Almodovar, much later on in the 1980s, uses this as kind of the basis for Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, and actually references Johnny Guitar in the film. So yeah, it has this like, what I like about it, again, I think, is that edginess, that like that sense of irony and of tongue-in-cheek, of like that, and the sense of subtext that like this is a Western, but it's not really a Western, right? It's not really about the West, and it is about these really intense interpersonal relationships, because that's what's at stake. What's at stake is not, running the outlaws out of Dodge or the founding of the West or anything. What's at stake is these really, comparatively petty squabbles that result in people being hung by a lynch mob.
Yeah.
And being pursued and being executed. A whole bunch of people get shot for no good reason.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Like, this movie doesn't have, I mean, Johnny Guitar, I guess, is be the closest thing, being the title character, but this movie doesn't really have like your big hero who's got like this mythology about him. A lot of Westerns, especially in the 50s and 60s, well, mostly in the 50s. In the 60s, they start to get grittier, um, but it's really about like the mythology around the West and building up the myth of the legends of the cowboys and all these big heroes and all the things that they did. And that's why this becomes the quintessential American genre. Whereas Johnny Guitar really doesn't do that. It's a very, I don't want to say small movie because that's not quite the right word, but it's like a very insulated place. It's not a big grand Western. It's a very small setting. With very few characters. The stakes are really only something that matter to the people here. And so it's not that it's small stakes, it's just that it's not wider, it's for just this group. And so because of that, it's not a movie that's like adding to the mythology of the cowboy of the West.
Yeah, to a certain degree, it's demythologizing. It's starting the work that would eventually be finished in the late 50s and into the 60s and 70s, of that demythologizing, this idea of the individual, the lone gunman who rides into town and saves everybody and then rides out again, right? So what we actually get is the opening of the film is Johnny Guitar witnesses a holdup of a stagecoach. Like, that's how it all starts. And then he leaves, he sees it happen, and then he rides into town and he introduces himself at Vienna's. And he begins to meet like all of the characters, and it takes a little while actually before Vienna actually shows up. But at one point he's asked, like, did you see this happen? And he was like, yeah, but I was far away. I saw 4 people. Like, that's what he saw. And then he was like, well, why didn't you do something? Right. And he points out that he doesn't carry a gun. Like, he was like, I'm not going to ride down without a gun thing. And then what we learn about him is that he used to be a gunfighter, and that he's sort of proving actually to Vienna that he has changed. And she says to him numerous times, you're still gun crazy. Like, and that's part of why they had eventually broken up, is because he is this like this mythological gunfighter, and she didn't want to be with him. She didn't want that to be their life. She wanted to have a life of peace. And that's why they eventually break up. But there's this whole thing about the gun, and when we talked last week, we talked about the phallic symbolism of the gun, and the possession of the gun and the proving yourself with the gun. And it's a huge part of the mythology of the Western. You've got a lead male character who is gunless. And when he does use a gun, the reaction is not, oh, you're such a great hero. It's, if you ever do that again, I will never see you again. Right? If you keep doing that, you wanted to kill someone. You want to hurt people doing that. It's saying like, this weapon that you put all of your life into and that you put all of your faith in is not only useless, it's pointless,
Yeah.
right? All it's going to do is cause suffering.
Mhm.
And the only thing you can do with it is to throw it away. And that's pretty potent symbolism when you're talking about the phallicism of the weapon and the phallicism of, the sort of the phallic obsession that is the American obsession with guns, and that is the obsession of the Western itself.
Yeah.
So it's this pretty concrete deconstruction of a number of Western myths.
Yeah. Well, and specifically with regards to Johnny and Vienna, like, and this relationship that they used to have that he really is hoping to rekindle, and the way that they are characterized, she is frequently throughout, like, she kind of goes back and forth, but she's frequently in the role of the masculine character. Like,
Yeah.
she's the one in charge. It's her saloon. She's the one who calls the shots. People turn to her, and not in a maternal way, in a she's the boss way. And um and so for him to be the one who gives up his gun in the hopes that that will win her back is part of the tying that into, like, he's basically willing to emasculate himself in
Yeah.
order to be with her.
Yeah, and I think so this is a really important point, I think, because so he shows up, he doesn't have a gun, he just has a guitar. And when before we've even met her, we get told about her by various characters, including the men that she employs. And at one point, one of the men, I can't remember which one it is, says like, "Oh, I never thought I would be happy working for a woman," but it's not really like working for a woman. Like, there is all of these references throughout the film of her not just being like a man, but being a man, right? And when she first shows up, she's not dressed to the nines. She's dressed in like trousers and a shirt, and she carries a gun a number of times throughout the film, and by the end of the film she uses it.
Yeah.
But there is this whole thing about like there's a lot made of her strapping on the gun, of her wearing the gun, and of her saying to him, and some of the implication is that she knows when to use it and when not to. And that his problem is not that he has a weapon, but that he uses it too much. And he's gun crazy. He is too willing to kill people where she isn't.
Yeah.
She is less willing to use it. So she earns the gun in a way that he doesn't. And again, if you're thinking about the phallic symbolism there, that's quite an interesting statement for a film to make in 1954.
Yes,
you can't be trusted with this, but I can, because I know how to use it better than you do.
Yes, it's true. One of the things I was gonna say, actually, on the subject of when we first meet Vienna, and I think this kind of, sorry if I'm jumping ahead here for you, but
No.
I think this ties into the situation between her and Emma, and how, in a way, like, this could be read as like a love triangle. I think that's really what is going on here, but there's kind of more of a love quadrilateral. I don't know what the right word is, but anyway, there's just a lot of like people. Everybody wants Vienna. She doesn't want any of them, but they all want her. Well, she wants one of them, but anyway. But yeah, when we first meet her, it's Emma and this group have shown up because they're, determined to take down this gang. And her brother, Emma's brother, has just been killed. And when we first meet Vienna, she's standing up at the top of the stairs looking down at everybody. And it's so interesting to watch Emma, because even when men butt in and they're trying to talk, like, it's really the two women that are having this conversation, this kind of showdown. But Vienna's up above. All Emma can do is look up at her. But even when the men try to butt in, it's like she may give them a cursory glance over her shoulder as she's responding, but she's only got eyes for Vienna. She's just like every time they're in a scene together, she's like got her eyes locked on Vienna. And it's just, but it really starts with that first moment when they're in the first scene together. And it really does, to me, it's like, oh yeah, okay, you could remove every guy from this movie and it's really not going to change the story much at all.
Well, and this is something that the movie itself comments on a number of times. So it's not, it's barely subtextual
Yeah.
even. Like it nearing the end of the film, like McKeever says, like, oh, it's always been about the two of them. It's always been between them, right? In their, as you say, in their first introduction, the men are being, all of the men are being ordered around by the women. The women are the ones who have control of the scene. They're the ones that have control of the weapons. They are the ones who say when something starts and when something ends. And the conflict is not between the men, it is between the women. And it is about that, and that combination of animosity and tension and desire that exists between the women. And kind of in the midst of this is Johnny Guitar and the Dancin Kid. Again, two, men who definitely posture, but two fairly feminized male characters. Vienna at one point says, like, well, why does Emma, hate you so much? Just like, why does she hate the Dancing Kid so much? Because she's really adamant about, like, we're going to hang this guy, right? And what Vienna's explanation is, well, because he makes her feel like a woman. And it's a really interesting commentary, because you're kind of like, okay, so there's this really intense tension between Vienna and Emma that is hatred, but is, it's that line between hatred and love, basically. And then you've got the men, these two male characters, but particularly the Dancing Kid, who's kind of in the middle of that. He wants Vienna. Vienna has very little interest in him. Right? Emma wants him, but she also hates him. And she wants to see him dead. And there is like this conflict between masculinity and femininity not going on about the men. The men are just kind of externalizations of that. It's about this like war between masculinity and femininity within the women. And it's fascinating, because you even have two women who are both dressed to physically resemble each other. They have similar haircuts. They are a similar height. They have this similar way of like butting heads against each other. There is, this constant boiling over of anger from Emma, and this constant sort of knowingness. Like, Vienna kind of knows what's going on. And I think that Emma does too, but it enrages Emma. And brings her to the point where she just wants to destroy everything. So it's this very destructive desire, basically, that is just erupting, and is eventually, going to come to a head and is going to end with the two of them facing off against each other in this kind of collision, in much the same way that it does in Point Break with Johnny and Bodhi, and the way that it did in Veracruz. So it's a continuation of it in some ways.
I feel like with Emma, because of the fact that she's part of this group that doesn't want the town to change, doesn't want the railroad to come in, she's very much against what Vienna's wanting to do, blames her for everything, blames this whole group. Like, she's very much stuck in the old ways, and you get the sense with her that there's so much of what guides her is resentment because it's like, why doesn't she want things to change? Why doesn't she want things to open up? It's because she knows how to navigate a world where she knows what the rules are.
Yeah, and both Vienna and the Dancing Kid represent a departure from that. And I think that departure is also sexual. At one point, she says that Vienna and the Dancing Kid are the same person. They cast the same shadow. And it's interesting because that's sort of, and she says things like that throughout, because there's this conflation of the two of them. And again, it's that the masculinity and femininity within both of those characters, but particularly within Vienna. And so in some ways, I feel like you can make an argument that Emma's desire for Vienna is displaced onto the Dancing Kid, and that in itself enrages her, because it's basically like she can't have any of them.
Right.
She can't express that sexuality. She can't deal with that change that those people represent for her. And it's like fascinating. I don't know. It's one of those where you're just like, what the hell is going on with this woman? What is wrong? And it's like, whatever is wrong, it's really, really fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's like, honestly, yeah, that is what I like about it. It's a Western melodrama. It's this, seething tension where you're just like, everybody calm down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but I think what it's also really good at is it's showing how that kind of a situation escalates.
Yeah.
Where you've got this combination, you've got this interpersonal hatred that is very psychological and is something that no one can examine fully. And that then turns into this escalation of violence and eventually into mob justice and mob rule, where you have this black suited posse, because they all come from a funeral, show up, right, as this black mass of people, being led by this woman in a black dress, who effectively, they set fire to the whole place. They burn the place to the ground, they kill someone, and they essentially declared mob justice against this group of men who held up the bank, because that's what happens. The Dancin Kid and his group hold up a bank, and this kind of gives, and then one of them shows up. Turkey gets shot, and he shows up at Vienna's.
Mm-hmm.
And she naturally, he's dying. She's like, I'm going to take care of him. And so, but you can see like how all of that builds from this relatively minor conflict between personalities into this, wholesale destruction of quite a number of people to no purpose as a result of this intense animosity and desire between these two women.
Yeah. Well, it's like what we've talked about with our other two films this month. If they would just admit their feelings, nobody has to die. It would be so much better for everybody.
Yeah, well, and like with Veracruz, that they can never get there.
Right.
It's
not the world they live in.
Yeah, they can never, it's that line that they can never cross, but that the films strongly imply are there. And that's where that homoeroticism comes in, that, we're not going to get Mercedes McCambridge and Joan Crawford making out.
No.
But
even if there wasn't a Hays Code, that's not going to happen.
and in some ways, like that, and that tension is, you almost can't break that tension. The only way that tension can be broken is through a gunfight. Like, mm-hmm. The only way that this is going to end is through at least one of them dying.
Yeah.
It has to kind of, and in that sense, and similar to Veracruz, and even similar to Point Break, kind of the world is set to rights as a result of that. It's very, one of the things that, particularly films of this era tend to do is, we're going to upend all of the norms, we're going to change things around, but we're going to kind of put the moral universe to rights by the end of it. Right? The women will be women, the men will be men, and that's how the story is going to end. And that's more or less where the story does end, with the destruction of Emma and with that kind of release of that tension. Mm-hmm. And yet at the same time, that's also, where the subversion of the story is. So it's this interesting, that's always the problem of queer theory, particularly with films like this, is that for, queerness, it's at some level within these films has to be eliminated because there's no other option.
Right. Yeah. This can't end with even a suggestion. Well, there's a couple of things that this movie can't end with because of the story that we have. Like it in the time period. Like, it can't end with any suggestion that the two of them could possibly have a future together. And it can't really end with the bad guy surviving through it, mm-hmm. and Emma very much is the villain of the movie in many ways because she's leading this group and she's out to get Vienna. And so it's like obviously she can't win and survival is winning in a version of this. And so that's where it's like for when this movie is made, Emma has to be eliminated by the end. She has to be taken out. Um and to the best of their ability, what that does is it does free Vienna from this hold, like this
Yeah.
situation. But there's also, I don't know, I know that we're supposed to see, like, I don't know if we're supposed to, but I know that there's a world where you can look at this as like, oh, it's really a love story between Johnny and Vienna. They find their way back to each other. It's like, I don't really buy that ending either. I just don't.
And that's the thing, and that's where I do think that Johnny Guitar does succeed at being quite subversive.
Mhm.
Because yeah, it isn't just, and we see kind of the background of Vienna and Johnny's relationship is that he was unwilling to give up the gun, basically.
Right.
And marry and settle down with her, which is what she wanted. So she turned around, she was like, okay, we're not going to be together anymore. I'm going to go off. She goes off. She builds a saloon from the ground up, right?
Mhm.
And it's implied that she's done a lot of unsavory things to get there. It's implied that she's been a whore. And at one point, he says all these things like, well, I could have expected you to wait for me and all that. And she's like, why in the name of God would you expect me to wait for you? We broke up. Why are the women the ones that have to stand around and wait?
Yeah.
I am going out, and she basically says to him, I'm going after what I want. And if that includes you, great, but I'm not going to wait for you to get there. And I do think that the film, kind of gives us that sort of, okay, because she gets shot, right? And so there is this moment where she suddenly has to turn around and lean on him. She has to be supported by the big, strong man, right? And it's very deliberate that they hired Sterling Hayden for this role, not just in the HUAC connections, but also he's a big guy.
Yeah.
He is a very masculine guy. And Joan Crawford is a very small woman. So putting the two of them in the same frame together, like he towers over her. He is huge, especially compared with her.
Yeah.
And so when she finally has to lean on him, she finally has to be supported by him. There is this sense of like, okay, now we've righted everything, right? But not really, because we haven't solved any of the problems that they had. And we haven't solved the inherent issue, which is that Vienna has experienced power and experienced control. And you don't get the sense that she is a woman that wants, at least at this point, wants to be someone's homesteading wife. Like I struggle to imagine Joan Crawford as a homesteader.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just doesn't fit together. So you're like, so this is not, it's a writing of everything, but it also, as you say, it isn't. And the film doesn't give us more than that. It gives us sort of like them kind of walking away, leaving the posse behind, leaving Emma behind, leaving this sort of other world and embracing in front of the waterfall. But even that in its extremity and its campiness is like, oh, this is, the Wayne's World, the mega happy ending, right? It's silly. There's something ironic contained within it.
Mm-hmm.
Is this really, them riding off into the sunset? And so, yeah, I think that the film maintains its subversion while also fitting into the, similar to Vera Cruz, while also sort of fitting into the narrative that we expect from films like this, particularly in this era.
Yeah, I think that's true.
So, I did want to say a little something about that, about the ending, the final shootout.
Yeah.
So basically the posse eventually trace the Dancin Kid and his gang and Vienna and Johnny Guitar eventually back to the lair, right? That's like hidden behind this waterfall. And this eventually leads into the shootout where you've got the gang sort of holed up in this little house on the hill and the posse kind of coming up. And it's obvious that like whatever happens, a lot of people are going to die. And so what finally happens is Emma, who has been building to this the entire time. We know that it's kind of this is going to come down to Vienna and Emma. So they meet on this hilltop on opposite sides of the house, with their guns, both of them carrying guns. And Emma actually, like I said, succeeds in shooting Vienna in the shoulder. And then Vienna succeeds in killing Emma. What I love about this is that I cannot name another film from this era where the final shootout is between two women.
No.
Like, I don't think it exists.
Mm-mm.
I don't even think, like, I can't even think off the top of my head, there probably is one, of a final shootout between women in most eras. Certainly not in Westerns.
I'm trying to think of an example of it where there's not at least a man involved.
Yeah, like this is really unusual. And it's really unusual also that, like I say, the hero of the film really is Vienna. It's not Johnny Guitar.
Right.
The villain is not McKeevers, it's Emma.
Mm-hmm.
They're even like, we've got Vienna dressed in yellow, you've got Emma dressed in black. Like, they are set against each other. They are, they're two halves, essentially.
Yeah.
They're very much set up as this kind of that final mythic pairing. That is the way, so many Westerns, and only it's two women, and it is two women who are essentially at war with the masculinity and femininity within themselves.
Yeah. It's funny because when I first started watching it, and it really does start with Johnny Guitar, who again is the title character. And I was like, okay, it's weird that this is again back to me trying to get into your mind. And I was like, okay, it's weird that this is being dubbed as like a, queer subtext between two women when this is about a guy. Like, okay, I'm gonna go with this. And it's funny because I was actually reading something where it said, so Joan Crawford was the one who got the rights to the book and had wanted to make this movie for a while, and she pushed Republic Pictures, I think is who produced it, to make it. And when she saw the first draft of the script, she was mad because her role was really small, and she basically forced them to rewrite it. She was threatening to take the movie away or to walk, and that would have just cratered the studio. So they ended up rewriting it and giving her a much bigger character, to the point where, like, it's her movie. It's really not his.
Yeah. No, it is like, it is funny because it is one of those films where the titular character is not the main character
that
at all.
happens sometimes. I've made this argument with people. Sometimes the titular character is not the main character.
Yeah, and then you do begin to go, okay, so why is this called, Johnny Guitar? The theme song is Johnny Guitar. And again, I think that's, whether
intentionally by Peggy Lee.
Yeah. And whether intentionally or not, I do think that, again, it's that kind of irony. We're upending expectations.
Mm-hmm.
We're upending, we've got characters called Johnny Guitar and the Dancin Kid. Of course they're gonna fight at the end, but they don't.
Right.
Right. They aren't the main, like, we even like some of their back and forth where the Dancin Kid really doesn't like Johnny Guitar, right? All of those things, just like, but they don't actually have a fight. They don't, there's this whole joke about the Dancin Kid doesn't dance.
Right.
Johnny Guitar can play guitar. Mm-hmm. He proves it. But there is this like, it's like, oh, these guys are the stars. Just like, no, they're not actually. It's the women. It's all about the women. I will say, just as an aside, apparently Joan Crawford and Mercedes McCambridge hated each other.
Yeah, I was reading about that too.
And now Mercedes McCambridge later on said that at least some of this animosity that existed between the two of them was a result of her particularly being an alcoholic. Mercedes McCambridge being an alcoholic and really having a difficult time with that. So there was a lot of that going on. Joan Crawford had also, like, as she did with so many people, had like had an affair with Mercedes McCambridge's husband.
Yeah, years before they did this movie together. So
Yeah.
it's surprising that Mercedes would sign on for it. But I also read that Joan was also dealing with some alcohol problems at the time too. So that's probably why there's so much fire and anger in some of their scenes together. They both showed up to set drunk. They're pissed about like their history. Also, I guess I also saw something about Joan Crawford was sleeping with the director at the time, and Mercedes was really upset about that too.
Well, I mean, Nicholas Ray had a reputation for sleeping with all of his stars, male and female. So,
Well,
yeah.
maybe Mercedes was just mad that she wasn't included. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, it works to their benefit, I think, because they hate each other on that screen. They
Oh,
are like,
yeah.
but also at the same time, just like, but you really,
But there's
really
this
want to kiss.
fire. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like there's that element of they're enjoying hating each other. That's part of
Mhm.
it. That's where like that sexuality comes in, that tension.
Yep,
They're really kind of like it at the same time.
exactly.
It's like, I want to kill you and it would be really pleasurable for me, kind of thing.
Mhm.
um yeah, and it makes for, I think, fascinating filmmaking and fascinating watching. And I do think I enjoy the talkiness of this. I enjoy the fact that there's a lot of people just yelling at each other
Yeah.
throughout a lot of the film. I like that kind of that melodrama. It reminds me of some like the Douglas Sirk films from a similar era where it's just
Oh,
over the
yeah.
top.
Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
and you've got those bright colors and everything, only it's in this western genre, and so it's something that we don't quite expect, or it's something that we expect, but we expect it with men,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Whereas when suddenly this western kind of becomes a woman's picture, literally.
Yeah. Well, and it's like it does that without becoming like a romance movie.
Yeah.
It's like it keeps all the trappings of being like a Western that's about like we said, the masculinity, the fight between good and
Hmm.
evil or whatever, instead of becoming like a sappy romance or a big old musical like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, or something like that, which
Yeah.
that's a whole other thing. Um but yeah, like it's about the women, but it's not a women's picture.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so it has all of those really interesting elements to it. So any final thoughts about Johnny Guitar?
Yeah, it's funny because now that I know what this movie is, like, I mean, I knew what it was vaguely about, and I knew, that it was supposed to be like this queer-coded movie and all that. Now that I've actually seen it and I know what it is, I know the next time I do sit down and watch it, it's going to be a much different experience. So I know I'm gonna enjoy it a lot more. It's available on Canopy. That's how I watched it. I think it's also
It's also on YouTube with
okay.
ads. It's on a couple of like the smaller like movie channels for free. And you
Yeah.
can also rent it. It's I anyone who has not seen Johnny Guitar, I really recommend it.
Yeah. I highly recommend it too.
It is a very different kind of Western. It is this like melodrama. I think it's really fascinating. I think that, it's good to go in, I think, knowing some of the political background, knowing sort of some of what the film is doing, but it does have this like influence on not just future Westerns, but future filmmaking. It's such a shift.
Yeah.
And it is part of that transitional period again that we've been talking about. And I really like it. And I want to give a shout out to Bill Simon for showing this to me when I was like, whatever, 21 years old in at NYU. And man, like, and to literally my entire film class that year, Like all of us were like, this is the best movie I've ever seen. Like, and it was just like, what the fuck? What the fuck are we watching? We saw it on a big screen too, which was very impressive.
Nice.
So yeah, shout out to Johnny Guitar. I love this movie forever. So I think that is going to close us out for this week. And next week we are going to stick with the ladies, but kind of depart from some of the thematics that we've been kind of unintentionally gone towards, which is, oh, if they would just fuck, everything would be fine. Although in this one, if they would just fuck, everything would be fine.
But nobody dies this time.
But no one dies. That's which is good. It would have been really, really weird if people had died in this movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to be talking about Bend It Like Beckham, which I am very excited about.
And too. It's gonna be fun.
So that will close us off for this week. And as always, we want to thank our wonderful and lovely and happy patrons who are very patient with us. Thank you so much to Abby, Audra, Brian, Connor, Estefania, Ferdinand, Heather, James, Judy, Carrietta, Matt, Michelle, MK, Monty, Nanina, Noel, Robert, Roxy, Steve, and Sharon. Thank you again so much for supporting us, guys. You will have the last episodes of A League of Their Own. We are finally done, and it's so sad. I'm so sad that this doesn't have another season. I'm very angry about it, but it's also really worth it.
Yes.
So of course, if anybody is out there who wants to hear A League of Their Own, there we go, A League of Their Own series, Our League of Our Own, I don't know.
Sounds good.
Anybody who wants to hear our A League of Their Own series, you can join our Patreon. That's patreon.com/citizendame. You also get some of our other bonus series, including Alfred Hitchcock Presents and Our Flag Means Death. And we're going to be starting another one fairly soon after we finish A League of Their Own. And yeah, and then you also get some like little buttons and stickers and fun things, and you get to support us. And of course, you can throw us a couple of dollars. We do have a Ko-Fi. That's ko-fi.com/citizendame. We do have our website. That's citizendamepod.com. And you can get in touch with us via email, citizendamepod@gmail.com. And of course, we are on the various socials. We are on Instagram and Blue Sky @citizendamepod. And we are Letterboxd HQ @citizendame. Of course, you can get in touch with us individually. Karen, where are you?
I am on Instagram, Letterboxd, and Blue Sky at Karen M. Peterson.
And I am on Instagram and Letterboxd @LH Business. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to y'all later.
Bye.